It's funny, when we were growing up, plastic was this amazing, modern convenience. It was in everything, from our food packaging to our water bottles, even our clothes. It made life easier, and we didn't think twice about it. But now, decades later, we're starting to see the unintended consequences of all that plastic, especially when it comes to our health. Here's something that might surprise you. Every single day, without even realizing it, we're eating, drinking, and even breathing in tiny plastic particles called microplastics. They're everywhere, in our food, our water, even the air we breathe. And while the research is still unfolding, early studies suggest that these microplastics could have some serious effects on our health, especially as we get older. Now, I know that might sound a little alarming, but don't worry, this isn't about fear. It's about awareness. Because once we understand where these microplastics are coming from and how they're getting into our bodies, we can start making small, practical changes to reduce our exposure. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about in this video. So, let's start with the basics. What are microplastics? Well, they're exactly what they sound like, tiny pieces of plastic, usually smaller than a grain of rice. Some are so small you need a microscope to see them. And they come from a lot of different sources. One of the biggest? Plastic waste breaking down over time. Think about all the plastic bottles, bags, and packaging that end up in landfills or the ocean. They don't just disappear, they slowly break apart into smaller and smaller pieces, eventually turning into microplastics. But here's the thing, it's not just old plastic waste we have to worry about. Microplastics are also being shed from everyday items we use right now. For example, take synthetic clothing. That cozy fleece jacket or stretchy polyester shirt? Every time you wash them, tiny plastic fibers break loose and go down the drain. Many of those fibers slip through water treatment plants and end up in rivers, lakes, and even our drinking water. And speaking of water, let's talk about bottled water for a second. Now, I know a lot of us keep a case of bottled water in the pantry for convenience, but here's something you might not know. Studies have found microplastics in most bottled water brands. In fact, one study tested over 250 bottles from 11 different brands and found plastic particles in 93% of them. That's a staggering number. And while we don't yet know the full impact of ingesting these particles, it's enough to make you think twice before reaching for that next bottle. But it's not just what we're drinking, it's what we're eating. Microplastics have been found in seafood, especially shellfish like mussels and oysters, because they filter water to feed and end up trapping those tiny plastic particles inside them. And it's not just seafood, researchers have even found microplastics in foods like honey, salt, and beer. Now, I don't say any of this to scare you, after all, we've lived with plastic for most of our lives, and we're still here. But as we get older, our bodies become a little more vulnerable, and it's worth paying attention to what we're putting into them. The good news? There are simple, practical steps we can take to reduce our exposure, and we'll talk about those in just a bit. But first, let's talk about something we do every single day without even thinking, and that's breathing. Because yes, microplastics aren't just in our food and water. They're in the air, also. When we think about pollution, we often picture smog hanging over a city or exhaust fumes from cars. But there's another kind of pollution that's much harder to see, tiny plastic particles floating in the air around us. That's right, microplastics aren't just in our food and water, they're in the very air we breathe. Now, how does that happen? Well, think about all the plastic products in your home, furniture, carpets, even some of your favorite cozy blankets. Many of these materials shed tiny plastic fibers over time, especially as they wear down. Every time you vacuum, fluff a pillow, or even just walk across a synthetic carpet, microscopic plastic particles get kicked up into the air. And because they're so light, they can stay suspended for hours, drifting through our homes and our lungs. A study a few years back found that the average person could be inhaling up to 16 tiny plastic particles every hour just from indoor air. That adds up fast. And while our bodies are pretty good at filtering out larger particles, some of these microplastics are small enough to slip deep into our respiratory system. Now, researchers are still studying what that means for our long-term health, but if you've ever noticed more coughing or irritation on days when the air feels heavy, it might not just be dust or pollen, it could be microplastics. So, what can we do about it? Well, one of the simplest ways to cut down on airborne microplastics is to improve indoor air circulation. Opening windows regularly, when the weather allows, helps flush out stagnant air. Using a good quality air purifier with a HEPA filter can also trap those tiny plastic particles before you breathe them in. And if you've got old synthetic carpets or furniture that's seen better days, consider swapping them out for natural materials like wool, cotton, or wood when possible. Every little change helps. Now, let's talk about something we do every single day, cooking and storing our food. Because here's the thing, even the containers we use to keep our leftovers could be adding to the problem. Plastic food containers, especially when they get scratched or worn, can release microplastics into our meals, especially if we heat them up in the microwave. That steaming bowl of soup or last night's pasta? It might be picking up tiny plastic bits along the way. A few years ago, researchers tested this by heating different plastic containers in the microwave. They found that some released millions of microplastic particles into the food after just a few minutes. Now, that doesn't mean you need to throw out every plastic container in your kitchen today, but it's worth thinking about small swaps. Glass or stainless steel containers are great alternatives, and they last forever. If you do use plastic, try to avoid microwaving it and hand wash it gently to prevent scratches. And while we're on the topic of food, let's talk about tea bags. Now, this one surprised me. Many of those convenient single-use tea bags? They're actually made with plastic mesh to help them hold their shape in hot water. And when you pour boiling water over them, they can release billions of microplastic particles into your cup. If you're a tea lover, switching to loose-leaf tea or brands that use paper or cotton bags can make a big difference. The bottom line? Microplastics have quietly worked their way into so many parts of our daily lives, but the good news is, we're not powerless. Every small change we make adds up. And the best part? Many of these swaps aren't just healthier, they're often more economical in the long run. Now, let's talk about one of the biggest sources of microplastics, one that might be hiding in plain sight in your bathroom. When we think about plastic in our daily routines, most of us picture water bottles or grocery bags, but there's another everyday product that's a surprising source of microplastics, and chances are, you've got it in your shower right now. I'm talking about body wash, scrubs, and even toothpaste. Years ago, many personal care products contained tiny plastic beads, those little exfoliating bits in face scrubs or body washes. They were designed to help slough off dead skin, but here's the problem. After they washed down the drain, they were too small to be filtered out by water treatment plants. That meant billions of these plastic beads ended up in rivers, lakes, and oceans, and eventually, back in our food chain. Now, many countries have banned these microbeds in rinse-off products, but they're not entirely gone. Some toothpastes and cosmetics still contain them, and even products labeled natural sometimes use plastic alternatives. The fix? Check the ingredient list for words like polyethylene or polypropylene, those are plastics. Or better yet, switch to products with natural exfoliants like oatmeal, sugar, or salt. Your skin and the planet will thank you. But here's something even more surprising. Your laundry might be a bigger culprit than you think. Remember how we talk about synthetic fabrics shedding microfibers? Well, every time you wash clothes made from polyester, nylon, or acrylic, thousands, sometimes millions, of plastic fibers break loose and get flushed into the water system. One study found that a single load of laundry could release up to 700,000 microplastic fibers into wastewater. So what can we do? First, try washing synthetic clothes less often. Spot cleaning or airing them out can help. When you do wash them, using a full load reduces friction, which means fewer fibers breaking off. There are also special laundry bags, like Guppy Friend or Corball, designed to catch microfibers before they escape. And over time, consider choosing natural fabrics like cotton, linen, or wool. They're not just better for the environment, they often breathe better too, which is great for staying comfortable as we get older. Now, I know all this might feel overwhelming at first. Plastic is everywhere, after all. But here's the good news, you don't have to be perfect. Even small changes make a difference. Start with one swap, maybe a glass water bottle instead of plastic, or a bamboo toothbrush. Then, when that feels natural, add another. Progress over perfection, right? And let's not forget, we've lived through decades of changes before. We adapted to new technologies, new health advice, new ways of living. This is just one more step in that journey. The fact that you're here, learning about this, means you're already ahead of the curve. So here's my challenge to you, pick one change from this video and try it this week. Maybe it's using a cotton tote bag at the grocery store or brewing loose leaf tea instead of tea bags. Then, come back and tell us in the comments, what did you try? How did it go? Your experience might inspire someone else to make a change too. And if you found this helpful, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more tips on living well at any age. Because here's the truth, getting older doesn't mean we stop learning or adapting. If anything, we've got the wisdom to know what really matters, taking care of ourselves, our families, and this planet we call home. So here's to small changes, big impacts, and living your healthiest, most vibrant life, no matter what year you were born. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.